Have you ever stopped to really ask yourself where your opinions came from? Sometimes, often in fact, we're walking through life, filtering everything through a bunch of opinions, which are really just conclusions about life and ourselves and the way that things work, that we picked up from some external source without even realizing. I remember when I was a kid, my dad always used to say this line. He used to say, "You can only rely on people to do one thing, let you down." He must have said that every day, pretty much. And as I got older, I got into the world kind of acting as though that was true, like that was my opinion, when really it was just his emotional stuff. And so I go through life not really trusting people or being pessimistic, expecting the worst. One day I woke up because I started testing my assumptions, and I said to myself, is this really something I believe? And when I realized it wasn't, I was able to actually be present and have a deep relationship with people. Now, this doesn't mean that all opinions are not real, but it just means that so many of the things we believe, they're not really our beliefs at multiple levels. That's what this video is going to be about. Here's a wood pigeon walking around. I always feel like these guys are up to something. Look at him. Very suspicious. If we're not careful, we end up going through life on autopilot instead of using our awareness to get through it. Autopilot basically means that we've been reactive. We're allowing our instincts to kick in, often in the service of the ego, the unreal identity that we've created for ourselves to survive whatever we've been through, and then we just keep repeating the same old patterns. Awareness just means that we're present in our lives. We can respond instead of reacting. And so we're not just doing the same old, getting the same results. We're actually moving with life. When it comes to our beliefs and our opinions, a lot of the time, they don't have anything to do with actually being present in life, and they have everything to do with all the parts of us that are resisting life and just reinforcing that. And so if you're not aware of this, and you take all your beliefs and opinions at face value and think that the conclusions your ego has reached are the truth, you're always going to be stuck. This is why it's really important to know that your opinions might not be your opinions, and so you need to dig a little deeper. Sometimes you might need to jump to a conclusion in order to survive, which is why our brain does it. It's a survival thing. For example, if I'm walking through these woods right now and a big ass spider leaps out in front of me, I'm probably gonna shit my pants. Not because it's necessarily a poisonous spider, but because part of me instinctually is aware that poisonous spiders can exist because of millions of years of evolutionary psychology, and so I'm gonna leap. That is a good thing, because if it was a poisonous spider, it would save me. But the problem is, a lot of the time, our instinctive, reactive way of doing things is not aligned with the way that things actually are, but we keep treating it as the truth, and then we end up living unreal lives. All of this is important because the ego is basically a reactive self-image that we create and filter life through based on our fear about our own emotional stuff, mainly shame, guilt, and trauma. When we have shame, guilt, and trauma, we create a fragmented version of ourselves, which sends the real version of us into hiding, and then we start reacting instinctively based on how we feel that self-image is threatened. In fact, it's worse than that, because we create a whole belief system on top of that self-image that reinforces the unreal relationship that we have with ourselves. And so basically we create this image at the level of emotions, and then we live to keep proving to ourselves that it's true when it isn't. I'm a very big fan of this big green rock. Just thought I'd share that with you. If we're not aware of how all this works, and we think that the unreal self-image that we've created in reaction to our own emotional stuff is the truth, and then we keep living to prove that this image is true to ourselves and creating a belief system on top of it that reinforces it, then we're always going to be stuck. We're going to be living in the void, which means that we're disconnected from ourselves in truth at the level of who we actually are, what the world actually is, and how reality actually works. We'll go around constantly trying to prove to ourselves that we're whatever it is that our shame is telling us we are. So you might walk around telling yourself, I'm the unlovable one. I'm the one who always fails. I'm the one who does this. I'm the one who does that. And it's never real. It's just something that you've created as a filter for yourself as you go through life, so that you don't have to look at yourself, face the shadow, let go of the ego or reconfigure the ego, and start putting yourself in the flow of life again, which is where you really want to be, but where your beliefs and opinions often don't let you be, because your beliefs and opinions are really just scaffolding for the ego that keeps you from all that stuff. Well, here's a big ass fallen tree. As you can see, it's torn itself away from its roots, kind of. Really, I'm just pointing this out because I want to make it into a metaphor for what I'm talking about, which is that when we buy into the ego and the unreal self-image that it causes us to create for ourselves so we can hide from our shame and yada yada yada, we basically tear ourselves away from our roots. The roots being the truth. And the ego tears us away from the truth at three main levels: the self, the world, and reality. And this all shows up in our belief systems and our opinions. At the level of the self, it makes us believe we're something we're not. We're the unlovable one, the useless one, the one who always makes mistakes, whatever it is. We label ourselves in a certain way as a certain kind of person, and then we keep reinforcing that belief by living up to the image instead of trying to smash through it. This is because we don't want to pick up any beliefs that actually threaten the foundation, the unreal foundation of the ego. The second level is the world. And speaking of the world, just bumped into this guy. What an interesting world we found ourselves in. Hey fella. At the level of the world, it's going to make us believe that the world has more power over us than it does. When we're locked behind an unreal self-image, then ultimately it's because we're fragmented within ourselves. And so what we end up doing is projecting that fragmentation out into the world, and it's reflected back at us. But that just makes us believe that the world is much more fragmented than it actually is. And so if we develop more wholeness in ourselves by reconnecting to our realness, we'll almost always find that the world opens up. But only if we can break through that self-image that the ego has created that's holding us back. At the third level is the level of reality itself. How things actually work. Are we in effect of everything that's happening to us? Or are we the cause? We're going to make things happen. Are we static and stuck and separated from everything else? Or are we connected to things and in the flow, moving towards wholeness? The difference between one way of being and the other is the beliefs, really, or the opinions that you hold about yourself, the world, and reality. And so if you want to improve your life, you need to make sure your opinions are actually real, or pointing as closely to reality as possible, rather than holding you back and making you live in a state of friction, frustration, and misery. Here's a random bundle of sticks that somebody has piled up for some reason. Another metaphor perhaps for how when we've been unreal with ourselves, we end up doing things that are really kind of pointless. Maybe I was a bit harsh on these sticks, because sometimes there is joy in just being present and doing things for the sake of it. I was just getting carried away as per usual and trying to use my environment to make metaphors about all these incredibly profound points that I keep making in this video. Anyway, the main point is that the ego is rooted in shame and disconnection. And so any beliefs or opinions that stem from the ego are just reinforcing that shame and disconnection, because they're just an extension of it, not anything true or real. In general, this is really important because it basically goes like this. We have underlying emotional stuff. That emotional stuff leads to a certain self-image of being a certain kind of person. That self-image leads to a set of beliefs or a whole belief system. And then those beliefs will inspire or limit the action that we allow ourselves to take. And that action is going to affect the results that we get in life. And so it all goes back to this disconnection, this split within ourselves, the state of inner fragmentation caused by the shame, Because if that's there driving us, then no matter what opinions and beliefs we have, if they're an extension of that, we're just going to be getting more shame, more disconnection, and becoming more unreal instead of getting where we want to be, which is always to be in the flow and to be real and feel fully alive. When our beliefs are fueled by our underlying emotional stuff, it takes us out of actual real life because it stops us doing two really important things. In fact, the two most important things: uncovering the truth and living the truth. If everything is limited by our emotional relationship with ourselves and how willing we are to face what's actually going on there, away from that unreal self-image that the ego creates, then we end up in a state where we constantly just believe what we need to believe or want to believe, not the actual truth. This is why there's so much content online or in the world in general that's just telling people what they want to hear. Like, people are going to tell you all of the things that your ego wants to hear, like you can be rich without doing any work, or that you can be happy and find the love of your life without loving yourself, or whatever it is. Basically anything that the ego wants to hear, people make content about. People tell people what they want to believe because that's as deep as people are willing to go in general. If they're coming from the shame-driven emotional place, their opinions have nothing to do with the truth. They have everything to do with hiding from ourselves and hiding from life. And so if you want to grow real, you need to start asking yourself, are you believing what you want to believe? Or are you testing your beliefs, questioning your beliefs, so you can find out what's actually true at those three levels: yourself, the world, and reality? A general rule of life for the average person that's been fueled by shame and living a life of quiet desperation, as the Rue called it, is that we live up not to our potential, but to the limits of our self-image. If your self-image is as a person who's always failing, then you're always going to fail, and you're going to keep finding evidence that you're a failure, because if you go against that image, you're going to feel really uncomfortable and have to come back down to reality and reconfigure your whole relationship with yourself. If you keep telling yourself that you're somebody who can never find love, then again, you never will, because you're going to keep putting yourself in situations where you unconsciously push love away, or you keep sabotaging relationships by, I don't know, having abandonment issues get triggered and running away, or whatever it is. And so you're just going to keep finding evidence in the world that that self-image you've created is the truth. But actually, it's not the truth. It's just a limit that your shame has set for you, and that your opinions keep validating, and so you keep taking action that validates it even more. And then you get stuck, you feel lost, because deep down you know you're disconnected from who you really are, but you can't take that leap of faith into breaking away from those old patterns and finding something real. And here's that big ass rock again. Well, this is a very dramatic scene of some trees. Maybe, maybe not. I like it. All of this that I'm saying is basically about how we're running through life according to a bunch of untested assumptions. Those assumptions are whatever is uncovered when we dig a little deeper into our opinions and take it away from the level of the conclusion that we've reached, i.e. the conclusion that I'm not good enough, or the conclusion that life just sucks, life's a bitch and then you die, or the conclusion that you just have to accept your lot in life, or whatever. You dig a little deeper and go beyond those conclusions and find some actual truth, a foundation of truth. And normally these untested assumptions are at three main levels. The emotional level, the assumptions that you picked up about yourself that might not even exist in words or as concepts, but as an emotional feeling, because you have unresolved emotional stuff. That's why shame is so powerful. It makes people feel worthless, even though they can't necessarily conceptualize where that came from or why it might be. All you need to know is that you've got the shame, and then you can start dissolving it by taking action that's real instead of unreal. The second level of untested assumption is the level of identity, which we've talked about quite a lot. You have an identity that you've created for yourself. It's basically a limit that you're going to keep living up to, and it has a bunch of inbuilt assumptions. So if you think or identify as somebody who's never going to find true love or be successful in business, those assumptions are guiding you. And then in every interaction that you have with other people, you're unconsciously going to be living according to that script, and it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so all of those opinions that are locked to your identity are just bullshit. The third level of untested assumption is the level of conditioning, which is basically anything that you picked up from the external world. That example I gave at the start, when I was talking about this belief that my dad kept sharing with me, but also the beliefs you pick up at school, in the media, whatever, all of these things are not real necessarily. But if you treat them as being real, without going too deep into understanding whether or not that's true, then you're just going to be running on autopilot, your awareness is going to be clouded, and you're never going to live your real life. This is the void that you end up living in if you keep being unreal with yourself. So it keeps getting bigger, of course, until eventually it consumes you and you no longer know who you are. If you want to grow real instead of being unreal and acting on autopilot, then basically it comes down to discerning the real from the unreal. A lot of people are going to say that's impossible because everyone has their own reality, and I have my reality and you have your reality, and nobody really knows what's real. That's not true, because what they're talking about when they say that is their interpretations. I have my interpretation, you have your interpretation, and everything is relative. But actually, everything isn't relative. There are certain things that are true about us all. For example, when we've been real with ourselves, we can always take action and go deeper into wholeness. When we've been real with ourselves, we're not going to be beating ourselves up and judging ourselves, because that means we're not accepting ourselves. The opposite of judgment is acceptance. If you've been real, you're aligned with truth, and so you are going to have acceptance. And so there's all these things that you can do to discern the real from the unreal. You can start with your thoughts. Anytime you catch yourself holding back, judging yourself, beating yourself up, telling yourself something's not possible when it probably is, and I mean that in a reasonable way. Maybe it's not possible to find a magical unicorn that shoots rainbows out of its backside, but it is possible for you to start a business or fall in love or whatever else it is that you want to do with your life. If you find yourself talking yourself out of that stuff, you've got an unreal belief that you've picked up. That's stopping you from acting, like I was saying, and it all comes down to your emotional relationship with yourself. So that's what you need to do. Test your assumptions, test your beliefs, figure out what's going on at an emotional level, stop resisting the emotions, allow them to move, because emotions are energy in motion, and basically just know that you have every right to move forward in life without holding back and hesitating because of conditioning and emotional blockages that make you think you're something that you're not. You're a human being. A human being always has the power to grow more real. Before I forget, another really clear sign that you've been unreal with yourself is that you're going to start treating certain things in the world as being the ultimate. You've got an opinion about something that puts it on a massive pedestal. So you'll be telling yourself stories like, if you make loads of money, you'll finally feel good about yourself. If you find a partner, you'll finally love yourself. If you get your body in shape and get hench and ripped, then finally you're going to be able to respect yourself, and all these different things. All of these things are good. Money is good, partners are good, being healthy is good, but they're not the ultimate. The ultimate is your relationship with life itself, your relationship with truth. And so if you've got all these thoughts and opinions about things that are distorting their value and making you treat good things as the ultimate thing, then you've been unreal, and you're always going to keep hitting roadblocks and getting stuck. The way forward is to flip the script, to realize that when we've been real, the realest thing in our lives is our relationship with life. And that means that we're uncovering the truth and living the truth, like I said, so we can go deeper into integration and acceptance of ourselves, but also acceptance of our own essence and whatever needs to be expressed from that essence. We'll start taking real action, and we'll flow, and we'll feel good, and we won't be holding ourselves back, and we won't be judging ourselves, because these opinions that are unreal and that come from these emotional blockages are not going to be stumbling blocks to doing what we came here to do, which is just to be real and to live life as a real human being. The short version is that if you feel like anything in the world is more important than your relationship with life itself, then you've been driven by shame. You've lost perspective, and you've created beliefs and opinions for yourself that are not yours. They belong to your emotions, and your emotions are not you. Your emotions are something that you have. You've picked up some social conditioning that you're supposed to look a certain way, or you're supposed to have a certain thing to be valuable, or whatever it is. But again, that's not you. It's coming from the external world. And so the way forward always is to turn inwards, dissolve that shame, find that foundation of awareness so you can come out of autopilot and start being present in your life and actually living, instead of being clouded by all this nonsense that really doesn't matter and is just going to send you on one wild goose chase after another. This abandoned house is a metaphor for how these unreal opinions about ourselves keep the scaffolding of the ego in place. They may be there, but they're not really doing a very good job, and it is destined to fall to pieces one time. You've got boundaries and barriers. You're not going to let anybody in because you're scared of getting hurt. Who knows? Something like that. Going to keep throwing these bad metaphors at you. If you want to make all this practical, there's one thing that you can do, which is a very useful exercise, which I think is from systems thinking or something like that. That's where I first heard it. It's called the 5 whys, and it's about getting in touch with those untested assumptions. Basically, you just keep asking yourself why until you find something true. So you find something that you believe, like, if I find true love, I will finally be happy. And then you keep asking why. So for example, if I find true love, I'll finally be happy. Why? Because I'll finally be able to feel good about myself. Why? Because I'll know that I'm loved. Why? Because somebody is validating me. Why? Because I don't know how to validate myself. Why? Because I'm filled with shame. Why? Oh, because I'm being unreal. Basically, it's always going to boil down to that with these unreal opinions, or in many cases. But once you know it, you can get some perspective and start making changes by excavating all of this unreal stuff inside you and replacing it with something real. So keep asking yourself why, test your assumptions, find out what you really believe, and then start living according to that acceptance instead of the autopilot of not being aware of those things in the first place. What's amazing about all this stuff is when you start really asking yourself if your opinions are your opinions, you'll get to the point where you get in touch with your realness, your awareness, your connection to wholeness as you put yourself in the flow of going even deeper into wholeness, and you realize it's not actually about your opinions at all. No opinion is fully real, because all opinions are just fragments. Like I was saying, there's interpretations of reality and there's reality itself, but there's part of you that's always real. Your opinions are always just going to be related to your interpretation. But eventually, if you question enough and you experience yourself enough, you're going to find yourself at a point where you don't need the opinions, or you don't need to be attached to the opinions, because you just know. You know that you're real. You know that you can move forward. You know you can do whatever you want to do if it's real and you're not fooling yourself. And you know that you're going to get off your ass, trust yourself, and trust life, which means you do your best, do what you can do, and then let go of the rest. You let life fill in the blanks, because you know, you don't believe that life can be trusted, as long as you've been real with yourself and you're not projecting all that fragmentation out there into the world. So that was the video. I did ramble a little bit. I've got a tiny bit of a cold. I'll use that as my excuse. Not that I really believe in excuses, so I'm being a hypocrite saying that. Here's that abandoned house again from a different angle. You're getting the full experience here on this channel. Don't allow yourself to be held up like a broken house. Find something real, a real foundation. Keep flowing. Know that you can ask yourself whether your opinions are yours or not, and that you don't just have to believe things because you've been told to believe them. You can find out what's true, and then you'll find out who you are. And you can do that thing I keep talking about, uncover the truth and live the truth. So I hope that helped you. If anyone wants to talk to me, there's a link on my website, or a link to my website, where you can book a call for a free coaching session. Other than that, stay real out there. Peace to you, and boom.